What is the easiest way to assess a body composition? Let's talk about it today. Hello, I'm Dr. Sam, this is Dr. Sam's Health, and today I would like to talk about body composition. In my previous video, I spoke about BMI, body mass index, and I said that it's a very great index that is really good for large-scale epidemiological studies, but it's not particularly well suited for individual assessment of personal health or body composition, specifically because it doesn't take into consideration your body fat percentage and pretty much anything that is related to actual body composition. So today I would like to talk about different ways of assessing body composition with the emphasis on body fat percentage, because it is usually one of the most important indicator for those of us who are trying to lose weight, get into particularly great shape, and so on. First of all, let's talk about the body composition in general. What is our body composed of? What are these compartments that we're interested in? First of all, we've got body fat and fat-free body mass. Body fat is adipose tissue that is located in different parts of our body, and depending on its location and essentially function, there are two major kinds of body fat. First of all, subcutaneous fat that is located literally underneath our skin. And that's why it's called subcutaneous fat. That's the body fat that most of the people want to lose in order to get six-pack abs and great definition of their muscles. There is also visceral fat. Visceral fat is the fat that is located around our internal organs in our abdominal cavity. That's the most problematic kind of fat, and for health reasons, we want to lose it as fast as possible. And there are also some other kinds of fat, like ectopic fat or intracellular fat, that are of least importance for this particular conversation. Now let's move on to the other part of our body, the larger compartment, which is lean body mass or fat-free body mass. It can be subdivided into some other subcompartments, such as bones and bone mass, skeletal muscle, internal organs and their content. We can also try to estimate the amount of body water that we have, and water is obviously distributed across all tissues, including fat, by the way. But usually we can talk about total body water and intracellular water, the water that is inside of our cells, and extracellular water, the water that is outside of our cells. Here I must say that all these subcompartments are actually quite difficult to estimate, and they are of less importance for this particular video, just because the more granular we go, the more difficult it is to assess these compartments, and usually us mere mortals do not even have access to quite a few tools that researchers can use to assess the size and volume and weight of these compartments. Today we're going to focus on body fat percentage and some of these subcompartments as I go through different tools, just because these tools allow us to assess them with a certain degree of precision. As I mentioned, there are quite a few tools that we can use to assess our body composition in general, different compartments, and specifically body fat percentage. They range from very simple, easy to use, accessible methods that usually tend to be not very reliable, not very accurate, and something that is on the other end of the spectrum, pretty much like space technology that is super expensive, almost impossible to access for somebody like ourselves, but very precise, very accurate. And today I'm gonna review most of them, if not all of them, and I just wanted to mention that I describe most of them in my book, The Rational Diet. Check it out, you might find it useful. Okay, the first tool is something that we have with ourselves all the time. It's our eyes. We can literally look into a mirror and ask, mirror, mirror, what's my body composition? And get the answer. Jokes aside, there are quite a few methods that are based on visual assessment of body composition. They are super unreliable, obviously, so we can take a look at the mirror, we can take pictures of ourselves and compare ourselves with our pictures from the past when we had different body composition. We can compare the way we look to certain pictures of our fitness gurus or heroes that we are following and try to estimate our body fat percentage and our body composition. We can also do a couple of other things, like, for example, we can take a look at the way our clothes fit us and see if our body composition has changed over time. For example, right now I'm going through my 2024 transformation, and I literally had to throw away a number of clothes just because they became too loose. And I can actually tell by the belt, the length of my belt, how much weight I have lost, and how my body composition has changed. Needless to say that this method is super easy to use, but at the same time it's super unreliable, super inaccurate. I actually do not know too many people who can actually accurately assess your body composition. Maybe Coach Greg Doucette with his laser eyes can, but these people are very rare. On the other hand, the main reason why I'm mentioning this method is just because most of us, when we are trying to change our body composition, the ultimate goal for us is not to reach certain point in terms of body weight or body fat percentage. It's rather to get certain physique, certain looks, certain way that we feel in our clothes and in our bodies. And that's why I mentioned this method. But from now on, let's talk about some more accurate quantitative methods that we can use. Okay, the second approach requires a little bit of science and a very cheap tool called measuring tape. This thing costs like $1 or $2, and you can use it to measure certain parts of your body, your waist circumference, your hip circumference, your neck, and you can plug these numbers into specific formulas. There are quite a few of them, and usually they require certain measurements, certain body measurements, your weight, your height, your age, sex, and given these numbers, based on previously collected statistics, these formulas can provide you with an estimate of your body composition. Usually we're talking about body fat percentage, but there are some formulas that can allow you to do a little bit more than that. I don't want to dwell too much on these formulas just because they are getting a little bit too complicated when we start using them. There are different formulas. Some of them require either a number of imputations there or they use logarithms, so it's a little bit difficult to use, but there are quite a few ways of using them with the utmost simplicity. Some of these formulas are in my book. Again, The Rational Diet. I put them there, just select few formulas that are very easy to use. I also programmed my website, drsamshealth.com. You can find some calculators there, but most importantly, there are quite a few other websites that have these calculators available online. You just Google search some of these formulas and you will find plethora of these calculators when you can just enter several numbers based on your body measurements, your weight, your height, your age, your sex, and so on, and they will give you a relatively reliable estimate of your body fat percentage and some other body compartments. A scientific note, these formulas are based on previously collected data. So I'm not sure how generalizable these formulas are, and I would say that people who are on different ends of the spectrum in terms of their body composition and body structure, these formulas can be a little bit inaccurate, or actually quite inaccurate, especially when we're talking about somebody who has high body fat percentage or somebody who is very lean, somebody who's got rather broader skeleton and body structure, and so on. But still, I believe that this method is actually super easy to use, super cheap, and relatively reliable. So definitely it's my second most preferred method to use. And just before we move on, I simply have to mention one more method or a very specific formula that can be used to estimate your body fat percentage using your BMI. In my previous video, I spoke about BMI and I mentioned that it doesn't take into consideration your body fat percentage, but apparently there is a method called Canbaye. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, to be honest. The spelling is Cunbae, which stands for Clínica Universidad de Navarra, and BAE stands for Body Adiposity Estimator. So there is a method that was developed in this clinic where you can impute certain parameters like your BMI, your height, your age, and it will use some statistical methods to estimate your body fat percentage. I'm not sure if it is very accurate. There are actually quite a few studies showing that it is, but at the same time, we've got much better ways of estimating your body fat percentage that do not involve BMI. Okay, moving on. The third method is quite close to the previous one. It also requires some body measurements, very specific ones, and some knowledge of some reference values and formulas. So this method is based on skin fold calipers. This is a very cheap tool, very easy to purchase. They cost like 10-15 bucks. They usually come with a little reference table for your reference. And the idea is that you can check the thickness of your skin in certain areas of your body, specific ones, plug them into a formula or add them up and compare the numbers that you have to a reference table, and that would allow you to estimate your body fat percentage. Here I will pause and I will say that despite this method being pretty much gold standard for decades, I don't like this method and I don't think it suits our purposes at all. I've got quite a few reasons to say so. The reason number one is that this method, by its very design, is supposed to measure your subcutaneous fat, and it doesn't allow you to measure your visceral fat. There are likely some ways of estimating your visceral fat, but they are estimations based on other estimations, so it's very inaccurate. The second thing, and the main reason, is that it's practically very difficult to use. First of all, if you have decent amount of body fat, subcutaneous fat, sometimes it's very hard to actually properly pinch your skin in order to do this measurement. Second, you have to be able to locate the areas where you are supposed to pinch the skin. And I've got this thing and I tried, and I'm a medical doctor. I've been trained in anatomy. I've spent decent amount of time in anatomy classes, and I've seen human bodies and human body parts, and I know how to work with human tissues, let's say it this way. But at the same time, I tried using it, and every time I pinch my skin, it gives me very different results. Also, you have to exert a very specific amount of pressure, and it has a very special tool here in order to allow you to standardize the pressure that you apply. But it's also a skill that needs to be practiced a lot. And unless you have somebody like a personal trainer who can do it for you, who had done it hundreds if not thousands of times, this method is very difficult to use for an untrained individual. One more thing before I forgot, some of these measurements are actually measurements of the areas that are actually very hard to reach, like for example the skin on your back. So you likely still need somebody to help you with this. So I don't find this method to be very easy to use. It's cheap. It can give you some good results, but these results and numbers are not very easy to use in home setting. You likely need either somebody who's really well trained in that, or at least somebody who can help you with these measurements, or you have to practice it a lot yourself in order to be able to use it appropriately. Sorry for this little rant. I literally needed to vent just because I tried this method before multiple times unsuccessfully, and I was quite frustrated with using the calipers. Let's move on to the fourth group of methods, which are based essentially on physics and also some formulas. So there is a group of methods that are based on estimating your body fat percentage based on measurement of your body density. So how do people do this? So the very first method in this group would be hydrostatic weighing. So the idea is that you can place somebody into water, immerse completely in water, and try to check their body weight when they are immersed in water. So the idea is that as the body pushes water down, the water pushes body up, and effectively it changes the reading of the scale. So if you compare your weight when you're immersed in water and your weight on regular scale, you can actually tell that there is a huge difference, and based on this difference, you can pretty much estimate your body density, because you will know your body volume and your body weight, and accordingly you will be able to calculate the density, and accordingly you will be able to calculate your body fat percentage, because body fat has much smaller density compared to other tissues such as bone or muscle. This particular method has been a gold standard for, again, decades, but I find it to be difficult to use for us just because you need special equipment, and this equipment is bulky, so you need some sort of a container, a bath, and special scale to check your body weight when you're immersed in water. And it's not that it would be super expensive, it's just it requires a lot of space, and most of the people wouldn't want that in the middle of their house. So you would likely need to go to some special location, get yourself wet, literally, and it's not an easy method to use to begin with. It's not something you can do very quickly at home. Okay, there are two more methods in the same category, again, based on the idea of measuring your body volume and accordingly density and accordingly body fat percentage. One of them is based on the idea that if you are completely immersed into water, you displace certain amount of it, and we can measure the amount of water you displace, and this amount of water will be equivalent to your body's volume. So knowing your body's volume and your body's weight, you can calculate your body density, and accordingly you can estimate your body fat percentage. With all the simplicity of this method, I must say that I wouldn't recommend doing it regularly just because it's actually very difficult to do. I don't recommend doing it at home. The reason for that is it's just like a very cumbersome method. You actually have to immerse yourself into water, get wet. You have to stay underwater for a little bit just to make sure that the water level kind of stabilizes. Then likely we need somebody to mark the water level. And there are quite a few other practical difficulties there. So I just cannot realistically recommend doing it. I don't think it's a very feasible way of measuring your body fat percentage. If you don't believe me, just try it a couple of times and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Luckily, we have a much more advanced method of checking your body volume and accordingly your body density and body fat percentage, something that's called BOD-POD. So there is a device, pretty large one. It's like a huge capsule where you can get inside, sit in it for a certain period of time, and this capsule measures the amount of air you displace. And based on the amount of air you displace, this capsule can calculate your body's volume. It knows your weight. Some of them, I think, can even check your weight while you sit in it, and it will be able to calculate your body fat percentage. Relatively expensive method and requires very specific equipment. So in order to do this, likely you'll have to go to a specialized clinic or center and pay money for that. So that is not something that you can do very often. You cannot do it daily unless you spend like $10,000-$20,000 and buy one for your home, which I don't think many of us can afford doing. So that's one of these methods that are on the other side of the spectrum. We're getting there, where methods are becoming more and more expensive and more technologically advanced. And speaking of advanced technology, now we can move on to the fifth category of methods that we can use for very accurate assessment of our body composition. The problem is that these methods are using medical imaging essentially in order to assess body composition, and since it's a medical grade technology, it requires very highly specialized equipment. It gets prohibitively expensive in some cases, and it's not something you can use very regularly. So first method in this group would be ultrasound. So you can use ultrasound to assess the size and accordingly the weight of pretty much any body structure, including body fat, your internal organs, and so on. Can be used, but it requires the ultrasound machine, technician, a specialist who can actually assess your body composition using ultrasound. So it gets a little bit cumbersome to begin with, plus likely it would be very expensive. Actually, I don't know of any place around where you can use ultrasound in order to assess your body composition. The next method is relatively inexpensive, but is also problematic in a way. It's DEXA scan. So the idea is that we can use X-ray scanner to scan our body, and these scanners are actually quite accurate to the point that this DEXA scan is considered to be gold standard of assessment of body composition. I know that some people would argue with that, but essentially it's a relatively simple technique where you just lie down in the scanner, it scans your body and gives you pretty accurate picture of your different body compartments. This method has one major flaw, which is exposure to X-ray. So you cannot really do it very often to begin with, and in general there is some health-related risks associated with the procedure to begin with. Again, it will cost you some money. You'll need to find a specialized clinic or center where they can use DEXA scan for you, but it is actually a very reliable method of assessment of body composition, one of the best ones. And the last method in this category would be MRI. I mention it just because it does exist, and it actually provides you with absolutely magnificent assessment of your body composition, fantastic precision and accuracy, but For us mere mortals, it would be close to impossible to get an MRI scan just to assess our body composition. This machine costs millions of dollars. There are teams of people servicing it and working with it. And usually MRI is reserved either for clinical scenarios or for very, very high-end research projects. So, having said that, I would like to move on to my favorite method of assessment of body composition, just because I believe that it's the most cost-effective method. It is relatively reliable, relatively cheap, and you can use it as much as you want. This method is called BIA, or bioelectrical impedance analysis. The idea is that you can run small electrical currents through your body, and depending on the resistance of different tissues, this device can actually estimate the size and weight of your different body compartments with relatively good accuracy. And these devices, they became very cheap over the course of the last 20-30 years. And the good part is that you can actually build in these devices into a regular scale. So I've got one of them here. Actually, I've got a couple of scales that use this method. So this one is made by InBody, and as I said, I'm not promoting any specific company. I have this one just because I used to have access to a large device that InBody makes. It costs like $10,000-$15,000. It's a relatively big machine. You might see them in some gyms these days. So that's like a little platform that you stand on, and it has like handlebars, handles that you can hold, and it will run these electrical currents with different frequencies, different intensities. The idea is that they can estimate your body compartment size and weight relatively well. And we're lucky because this company started making just regular consumer level scales, like the one that I just showed to you, this one. I don't remember how much I paid for it. Maybe like it's somewhere between $300 and $500. It's on the expensive on the expensive end of the spectrum for these devices, but it is relatively accurate, super easy to use, and it gives me a decent assessment of my body composition. Essentially, BIA is my favorite method of body composition analysis just because it's very cost effective, it's very easy to use, you can use it multiple times a day, it's relatively inexpensive. I know I gave you an example of my InBody scale that I did pay like $300+ at a certain time in my life, but I'm a nerd and I like gadgets, and you can definitely buy a scale these days for like $70 or $100, and you can use it for yourself, for your family members, for your clients, for your patients, friends, whoever, multiple times every day. There are no expendables there, and you can use it for many weeks, months, years, decades if the device continues to work. Actually, I must say that all my scales that I have, and I have several, they have been working for over a decade. And lastly, it's relatively accurate. It gives you decent level of precision, and obviously there will be some fluctuations in terms of like body fat percentage or your amount of your body water that will depend on your hydration levels and so on. But this kind of devices, they are right in the middle of the spectrum of different methods that do not require any kind of like special training. They're relatively cheap and relatively reliable and accurate. So that is something I do recommend getting for yourself if you are very serious about weight loss and you really want to get very accurate results. By the way, since I mentioned health and I am a medical doctor, I literally have to mention one thing. Since these devices are running electrical current through your body, it's a very small current, but still it is an electrical current. It's not recommended to use these devices if you have certain health conditions or you've got some electronics in your body like pacemakers and so on. And having said that, I think that we have covered all the methods, at least the ones that I know, in this video, and I feel that you should be fully equipped to make a decision in terms of what tools to use in order to track your progress, to assess your body composition and so on. Please let me know in the comment section if you would like me to cover some other methods or anything else, essentially, or share your experiences with different methods, if you will. And I think it's time to wrap up this video. I thank you for your attention, for your time, and I hope it was helpful. And if you find it helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, check out my website, drsamshealth.com, check out my book, The Rational Diet. I'm very proud of it. I put a lot of heart, soul, and effort into this manuscript, and I hope that my videos, my website, and my book would be of help in your health and fitness journey. Thank you so much. All the very best.